When it comes to the question or the debate or the conversation around Indigenous spirituality in public schools today, because there's a little bit of a hot topic, right? And I've seen this in my social media. Parents, teachers, educators who are getting upset with smudge or cedar brushing, certain Indigenous cultural practices being brought into schools, and it creating a little bit of a tension because people are like, well, religion is not supposed to be taught in schools. So where does that fit into cultural safety, reconciliation, and decolonization of our public K-12 system? Here's a couple things. Number one, we cannot pick and choose elements of Indigenous culture that we want to bring into the schools. If we do, we perpetuate colonialism, assimilation, and the reward for conformity, which is highly, highly oppressive in nature at the end of the day. And as Indigenous peoples, we cannot cede our spirituality when we walk into a public institution. Secondly, if you look at the long legacy of residential schools and other assimilation policies like the potlatch ban, where it used to be illegal for us to pray, it used to be illegal for us to gather in ceremony or celebration or even just physically gather. That long legacy of colonialism and very violent oppression creates today, in the 21st century, in the year 2024, this incredible need for equity in education. Now, equity is not the same thing as equality. And schools like to think of themselves as very equitable places. We call that student-centered learning, or other names. But equity and equality are not the same things. Equity is giving more time and attention where time and attention is due. And as Indigenous peoples, we kind of deserve a little bit of equity here because our language, cultural practices, ceremonial practices, regalia, you name it, was outlawed and then stripped and removed by legislation in this country. So I think there's a little bit of wiggle room there. No, there's a lot of wiggle room there for schools and school districts to create policies that really educate the communities on the necessary accessibility of Indigenous cultural practices in schools, like smudging, like cedar brushing, and all those other incredible cultural practices that are very healing and connecting for not just Indigenous learners, but all learners. And then, of course, with my trauma-informed hat on, everything when it comes to cultural practices is available for the choice. If a student does not want to participate, then they don't have to. But those are my thoughts on Indigenous spirituality in the public K-12 system.